Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. I'm going to do your daily 5 today. I have provided stock research and consulting to institutional money managers for the past 30 years. I consider myself a bottom-up technical analyst, and I go through thousands of charts each week in multiple time frames trying to identify the most attractive patterns. So let's go straight into your daily 5. I'm going to start out with a chart of the IWM. The Russell 2000, it's an interesting process as what has been taking place here. If you notice on the monthly chart, I've got a monthly chart on the left and a weekly chart on the right. I am running a live version of the ACP version of StockCharts right now. And so if you look at the monthly chart on the left, starting in 2018, you started a corrective process, and it's much easier to see if you look at the MACD. The MACD started to work its way back down towards the zero line and really just recently caught up with the zero line and has turned back above its signal line and the zero line right around the same time. This is taking place while price is breaking out again. And, you know, if you go back and look in the prior period, back in 2016, we had sort of a similar pattern. It wasn't as extensive of a correction process, and it didn't quite make it to the zero line, but it's sort of the same concept where we go through this long process and then we start to emerge again. And so if I switch now, I just want to look at a closer look at a weekly chart with the relative strength versus the S&P. So this black line is the relative strength line relative to the S&P, and I've got a moving average there to show that for the first time in 2 years now, we're starting to see a shift in this. If I drew a trend line in, you're breaking the trend line, and it's a pretty convincing reversal taking place. And it's taking place at the same time we're getting a breakout in price above this key resistance zone. And so, I think it's pretty relevant. I went through a couple thousand small cap stocks over the last few days, and I'm going to highlight a few of those today during this 5, but I thought it was important to just start out with this bigger picture look and recognize that when we get this kind of break of the small cap index versus the S&P, it's usually a good sign for these smaller cap names. And generally speaking, it's usually a good sign for the overall market. So I'm going to go into my first stock here. Let's switch this to the monthly. I'm going to go into THRM. So again, what I'm looking for, so I've got a monthly chart on the left and a weekly chart on the right here. THRM, this is a auto parts company. Now, when I went through, and I've gone through a lot, even on the large cap basis, I've noticed a lot of improvement in the auto parts area. A lot of these stocks starting to poke up and break out of consolidation areas. So very attractive from that standpoint. And if you notice, you've had this sort of sideways phase, especially since 2018. You've been bumping your head against 50 for a couple years. And again, notice a more subtle version of the MACD where it worked its way back down to the zero line and is starting to work turn to the upside. Now remember, this is on a monthly chart, and I am focused on emerging basing patterns. So you need to realize I'm looking for a trending move to take place, and not really a short-term trade. I mean, if you get the timing right, if you can find a pullback, then yes, you could treat this as a short-term trade. But, I'm sort of pointing out this monthly, weekly pattern, and it looks like something is emerging, turning into something pretty important, really. Let's go to the next stock, ESI. And so ESI Element Solutions, this is a chemical company. I noticed again when I went through, and I've been going through a lot of stocks, the chemicals are showing improvement. Basic materials has been very, very strong. This is no exception. Obviously, this is a smaller cap name, but if you notice what you've got here on the monthly chart, you've had this sideways line that's been forming for a couple years, and it's very quiet. ADX is low. MACD is crossing above the zero line for the first time in really in its existence based on the way this played out. And then the weekly chart has bumped its head up against this 12 and a half area for, a couple years. And again, we have this low ADX condition in place, and we're starting to emerge out of this. I'd like to see a little bit more of a convincing breakout, maybe add a little volume into the mix. But this is a stock to watch coming out of this big basing area. Let's go to the next stock. BEAT, healthcare, shown a lot of strength in healthcare over the course of this week here. And, there's a few, on a bigger cap basis. Actually, when I look at the auto parts, the MGA is a big cap name that is definitely worth looking at. And when I look at some of the healthcare names, the ABC and MCK are also stocks to maybe look at on the healthcare basis that look very, very interesting coming out of a big base. But I wanted to bring up this BEAT because, again, it's the same. It's a similar pattern. This is probably a little bit early, but if you notice what took place on the monthly, you had a move up to 75, and you've really been, over the last couple of years, you've been working your way back down and correcting off that huge up move and basically digesting and correcting back down. And look at what the MACD has done. It's worked its way back down to the zero line, and it looks very, very close to shifting and getting back above its signal line right around this zero level. One of the signals that I look for, obviously, is a zero line reversal, and I find this to be a pretty interesting pattern, especially when you have a low ADX condition on that time frame. If we look at the weekly chart, we've been doing this sort of sideways pattern with low ADX, very quiet, and now the MACD is starting to emerge. I think if we can work our way through 50, we're probably getting the start of some kind of a wave to the upside that could have some really good trending capability. When you come out of a low ADX condition, after a sideways period, you should expect a trend to form, and I just like the way this two time frame pattern has developed. Let me do one more stock here, and I felt it was important to show a semiconductor stock. I tried to pick out stocks in the daily 5 today that not only were some small cap stocks, but also ones where I think from a sector standpoint, we're seeing some real strength. And there's no doubt that the semiconductors are showing some real good action recently. I would take a look at a stock like ADI. Maybe it needs a little bit of a pullback on large cap names, ADI or ON, or possibly MU, which is trying to emerge out of its consolidation area. But look at this laser. In fact, I want to switch this to a weekly and daily just to give you a little bit better idea here. So if we notice, you've got this long sideways basing pattern, cupping pattern that has developed on the weekly chart. It's been somewhat of a volatile consolidation. And I wanted to point this out because the ADX really never got below where the ADX line, this blue line, never got below both the green DI and red DI, which is plus and minus DI lines. And I prefer to see that below. But I love the dynamics of this trend structure and the reversal that's taking place. And I really appreciate the breakout, the size of this bar on the breakout and the dynamics of the volume and everything. It just looked like the start of a move. It did get very quiet at the very end of this consolidation period. And if we go and look at the daily chart, we had low ADX for an extended period of time, several months, and now it's starting to emerge. And you can see the blue line, which is the ADX line, is crossing out above. And if we're getting a little bit of a pullback back towards support, this is a very attractive pattern coming out of this base. So that's your daily 5. I hope you enjoyed this segment. You can contact me through LinkedIn or find my research on rabilstockresearch.com. Also, I've started a YouTube channel for educational purposes to show how to trade in multiple time frames. I wrote a book with the same name, and many of the videos expand on the concepts in the book. Have a great trading day, and I will see you next time.
Hey, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.